Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another edition to the Point Podcast. Hope everybody's doing well on this Friday. Hope everybody had a good Canada Day. However, you celebrated it. Obviously, it was a little different, as I mentioned yesterday on the podcast. But nevertheless, hope everybody had a good time. And as we head into another weekend here, it not the greatest weather in here in New Brunswick, but we do have a lot in the horizon. We're about 12 hours away from Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Final. Tomorrow night, we'll see Game 6 of the Eastern Conference Final between the Milwaukee Bucks and the Atlanta Hawks. We'll get into that. Wimbledon is in action all day today and tomorrow, with Sunday being the off day at that tournament. We have the Euros kicking in again today. I've been mentioning it a whole bunch on the podcast, but I've been catching them after work watching, the Switzerland-France game the other day was just incredible, where Switzerland's down 3-1 with 9 minutes left. They tie the game, then shock. They stopped Kylian Mbappe, one of the best soccer players in the world, in the last penalty kick. Just great theater there. But, a lot of surprises. Portugal's out. France is out. Germany. So it looks like England, Spain, they got good pass potentially to get to the end, with the English not winning a major tournament in over 50 years. Maybe this is the year they finally break through, with the likes of Czech Republic, Denmark, Ukraine still being in the mix. So a lot of upsets in the Euros, which that'll be on today and tomorrow with the final 8 teams doing battle. But I wanted to start off today by talking on something. I got into this earlier in the week, but I want to touch on it more because yesterday it was a big deal. The Supreme Court ruled in the United States that college athletes can now use their name, image, and likeness to make money, essentially. So what this means, just to simplify it, before, if there was a jersey and it had Johnny Manziel on the back of it when he played at Texas A&M, he didn't get a dime from that jersey. However, it has his name on the back of it, right? It just sounds counterintuitive. The player, that's your name. You should get something from that. But that's not just how the NCAA worked. But finally, after years and years where you think of the athletes that could have made money just using their name, using their likeness, endorsing products, they're going to be able to do that. And finally, this is happening. And it's, first of all, this is great for college athletics. And it's great for, you can call them student athletes, but they're athletes. Most of these players are not going to college because they want to become an architect. Let's just be honest here. They're going there because they want to play great and then go to the NBA or go to the NFL or go to the NHL, whichever league. But I'm going to focus more on college basketball and college football here because it just dwarfs college hockey, men's and women's, when it just comes to, when it comes to viewership and just the overall love for the sport. College football may be the biggest sport in North America. And that's not me just giving a hot take. If you look around college stadiums, there are 80 to 90,000 people every given Saturday. And you think of Trevor Lawrence, who was just at Clemson the last number of years, just went first overall to the Jacksonville Jaguars. How much money could he have made while in school? I think it would be astronomical. Gatorade, Coke, all these big companies, clothing companies that he could partner with, that's using his name, his image, his likeness every time he can sell stuff on social media. That was banned before. In 2010, a player was fined because he got a tattoo that was deemed inappropriate when it comes to selling a product. That's how much the NCAA had people by the short and curlies. Those days are over. The NCAA is one of the worst organizations in the world because they're corrupt. They're run by really, let's just be honest, shitty people, and they don't allow their student athletes, quote unquote, to make any money. Yet they make it hand over fist. You know what? I'm sure the capitalist crowd that's listening is saying good for the NCAA. I'm not saying good for the NCAA because the NCAA, you have nothing without your athletes. That's just a fact. You need these athletes to provide a product. Nobody's going to the arena to listen to old white bald men talk about what they did in 1894. But this is great for all the future athletes. Maybe it keeps kids in school longer. I think one thing it will do is upperclassmen, seniors and juniors that could go to the NBA, as an undrafted free agent, maybe never make it. But your 4 years in college where you're a stud, you can make some money. And if you know what you're doing financially, if you get a good investor, you have a really good start to life. You may not be set for life. You may make $3-4 million, but it's a damn good start. You get a degree, you have $3-4 million in the bank, and then you can go have another career. It's those players I think this is really going to help. And this also ends, back in the day, Reggie Bush was stripped of his Heisman Trophy because it was proven that his family had taken money so that he would go to USC. Well, no more you don't need a backyard deal anymore, because a company can just say, go to USC and we're signing you. Okay. Gatorade, you're going to be our sponsor. It's going to be you, or Subway, or what we see all the time. These pro athletes get signed with these companies. Some college athletes are going to get that opportunity, and hopefully, it's spread across teams. It's not just quarterbacks. It's not just O-linemen. Other guys deserve that opportunity as well to make their own deals and see what they can do. But looking back, I just wanted to think of guys who I think really missed out on breaking the bank when it comes to just what they could do. A couple of names came to mind. Tim Tebow, when he was at Florida, he was a big deal. I mean, we see how polarizing he is now as a subpar athlete. The guy, I think he'd kill in the United States when it comes to branding. We know how big religion is in the United States with him being Angelico Christian or whatever the hell he is. That I think that's going to work. His whole Tebow time, and when he takes a knee after he scores a touchdown, and he's a polarizing figure, and he's a big, strong, straight white male. So, that doesn't hurt either. Playing quarterback, winning Heisman trophies, yada, yada, yada. So he's one that instantly came to mind. I thought of maybe like Christian Laettner at Duke. He wasn't the best NBA player, but Christian Laettner was a guy that was really, really good at Duke when he played there. And they were starting to turn the tide, Duke as a program. I think of the Fab Five at Michigan. Those guys were huge. Beginning of the pandemic, I watched a documentary with my dad about the Fab Five. Obviously knew about them, but my dad was a big Michigan fan at the time. He's still a big C-Web guy. And, just watching that doc and seeing what these five guys were doing, where they almost had, the improbable season where they were going to go undefeated. They end up losing in the Final Four. But these guys could have, if these guys had this opportunity, C-Web talked about it on the TNT broadcast the other night, where he said, I would have stayed a couple extra years at Michigan. He left as a 20-year-old after his sophomore season to go to the NBA. He said, I would have stayed because I wanted to anyway, but I was making no money. Well, he could have been making money. And, Jalen Rose and Juwan Howard, and even the other two members of the Fab Five who didn't have pro careers, they all could have been a selling point. They all could have divvied up the money evenly. And, the two guys who didn't make it could have had a good start to their life. But I think those guys in Michigan, just the car companies, the different opportunities they'd have, I think they would have struck it rich. And number one to me, this is head and shoulders, is Johnny Manziel. Johnny Manziel turned out to be a really sad NFL story because he never got to the ultimate, top of the heap. He was a disappointment in the NFL. But in college, this guy was electric. He was the Heisman Trophy winner. He was the man. He went to Alabama and beat them as Texas A&M quarterback. That doesn't happen every day. And he was a show. He was a showman. He was doing the Johnny Money. He was celebrating, and he could sell better than everybody. Who wasn't? You weren't a college football fan. You may not have been a sports fan, but you knew who Johnny Manziel was. I loved him. I still wish he was playing football. I have a soft spot in my heart for Johnny Manziel. Now, he could have made a ton of money, and it probably would all be gone right now because he would either have drink in it or maybe, I'm not going to put it up his nose. But nevertheless, he could have made a ton of money going into the NFL. And this new ruling is going to give kids, I mean, that's what they are when you go into college, university, you're a kid, the opportunity to make some money. But these kids know how big they are. When you're playing college football at Clemson, at Alabama, you know you're a big deal. Because guess what? All your games are on ESPN. Guess what? They talk about the draft. They talk about players day in, day out. And there's 80,000 people at the stadium. That's 80,000. That's just in your demographic. How many people are watching the game from across the country? We see after players leave college. Kyler Murray was in a commercial right away with Tim Tebow about the Heisman. He could make that commercial with Tim Tebow tomorrow now. That's him. You can put him in a commercial. You couldn't be in a commercial before. You couldn't have a job in college. Like, that's how bad this system was in the NCAA. Unless you worked in like campus or something, you couldn't go work because so it's great to see a really bad organization like the NCAA get what's coming to them, because they've run this free system for the longest time where they've just kept bringing in money. And it's like, okay, well, this kid's done. He's going to the NFL. Let's bring in another guy, from the barn, bring him up from the pasture. We'll shoot him. We'll bring in another guy. It's like, yeah, it's like a horse that has a bad leg. You got to put him down. That's what these players get. They're going to the NFL. They're done. And then you bring in the other guy. Next quarterback, who's up? Spencer Rattler, Oklahoma. Okay, Kyler's gone. Let's bring in Spencer. That's just how this works. But I'm glad to see that these college athletes are going to get the opportunity. And this is not just for men. You think of UConn and the program that Gino Auriemma has produced at UConn. Paige Beckers is a very popular female player for UConn. She's got over 400,000 Twitter followers. She's got more Twitter followers than Jalen Suggs, who she's dating at Gonzaga. Paige she obviously wants to go to the WNBA after, but she can make some money this year. She's one of the most recognizable female athletes in the world right now. So a woman like Paige Beckers, we see with these women, they have opportunities too. It's not all just about the men, but she's the one that came to mind for me right now when it comes to female athletics. And in college, I don't think there's a bigger one than Paige. So it's good to see opportunities going to these men and women. And I hope they make all the money they want, because forever the NCAA has been making it hand over fist, and they will continue to do so. But even at a lower scale, these college athletes should have the opportunity to make some money while the NCAA has them. And while you're there 1, 2, 4 years, make what you can. And then hopefully you have a good financial investor and you move on from there. But overall, a very good day for in my opinion, for the college athletes, and screwing over the NCAA is never a bad thing, because that's just a corrupt system. Tonight we have the Stanley Cup Final, Game 3. Tampa Bay at Montreal as the series shifts back to La Belle Province. And after the first two games and mulling it over, game one was obviously Tampa. That was just a game dominated by the Tampa Bay Lightning, where I don't even think it was really that close. Montreal never had agency in the game. I touched on that. And, the best players came to play for Tampa. In game two, it was a complete opposite, where the Montreal Canadiens outplayed the Tampa Bay Lightning, but they didn't get to the great spots. I think Vasilevsky made some big saves. I mentioned the save on Toffoli head on, stopping Suzuki on the breakaway with that nice poke check, stopping Caulfield in tight, but they're not getting enough slot shots on Andrei Vasilevsky. Tongue twister. But they need to get to those areas. They need to. Shooting from the periphery is not going to work. Andrei Vasilevsky is too damn big and too damn good to allow those to go in. So tonight, the emphasis for the Montreal Canadiens has to be get the puck to the middle of the ice. Keep guys in front of that. Get some screens. Make Vasilevsky work to see the puck. At least make his, move his head and fight through that screen. And maybe the Tampa defense has to take a penalty in the position. Then you get a power play. But that's how you get to do it. And also, Tampa's only had one power play goal in 2 games. And that was at the end of game 1, which was really an irrelevant goal by Steven Stamkos. But don't take stupid penalties. The refereeing has been inconsistent in this series. I've hated most of the calls so far, where they've let them play a lot and they call junk. But don't take stupid penalties, because you do not want to give this opportunity. You don't want to give the Tampa power play many opportunities, because Point, Kucherov, the way they moved the puck, I thought the penalty kill was unbelievable in game 2. But don't poke the bear. Stay out of the box. Another big factor tonight is Dominic Ducharme is returning to the bench for the Montreal Canadiens. He has not coached since game 2 of the Vegas series, where they get back to Montreal. He's getting ready for game 3. And that morning he had a test irregularity, and then it came out that he had actually tested positive for COVID-19. Although he was vaccinated, he had to go into quarantine for this period of time, and yada, yada, yada. But Luke Richardson did a good job. But Ducharme's the head coach, and he's back on the bench. And looking at the first 2 games, Luke Richardson was out of his league. When it comes to getting matchups, he looked confused on the bench to me. He didn't fight hard enough to get the Danault line against Point. And for Ducharme back on the bench, there's no excuse not to have that matchup tonight. When I watch the game tonight, if I do not see Ducharme against Point 99% of the time tonight, I'm going to lose it. And Montreal fans, you should too. Because is Philip Danault a lock to stop this line from scoring? No. But he gives you the best opportunity to stop Point and Kucherov from scoring. That's the point. You can't guarantee it. You're not going to skunk everybody like they did Mark Stone, but they made Austin Matthews look like an average hockey player. Mitch Marner looked like Fozzie Bear out there. So get that matchup tonight. If Dominic Ducharme, it shouldn't be a fight because you have last change. Continue with that matchup. Other than that, the third line of Tampa has been a problem for the Montreal Canadiens. And I'm not a huge matchup person per se. I do think the one matchup after that. But if you can get the Anderson line against that third line of Tampa, I think that would be interesting. Of Anderson, Byron, and name's not coming to mind right now. But Kotkaniemi. That line needs to, I would try to go third line for third line, because that's a physical line that defends well. Toffoli, Caulfield, and Toffoli, Caulfield, and Suzuki going up against the Stamkos line would be a good one for me, because I think that's a good head to head. But Tampa defensively, sometimes they can cheat a little bit, and you may get some scoring opportunities. But make life difficult. Make the transitions out of Tampa's zone, tough. I think they've been way too easy the first couple of games. You see Chernak, he just has a quick exit out of the zone to Yanni Gourde or to Blake Coleman, and it's make the first pass difficult. For Montreal, just mucking up the waters, and they did that in game 2 to an extent, but you want your hits to be impactful. When you go back and throw a hit, if it passes askew, if the pass is, out of his reach, and then it's a turnover, you get zone time, that's a win. So Josh Anderson, Gallagher, Lehkonen, if he can play, he left game 2, so he's still up in the air for tonight's game. Throw some checks that force a guy to make a bad pass or make a mistake, because Tampa has more firepower. They're going to be able to score more goals, but forcing turnovers, getting quick opportunities is the way to go here. The other big point for tonight's game is Carey Price. Carey Price has carried the Montreal Canadiens a lot in the past, where he's been the dominant player in front of a poor team, and they probably got farther than they deserve to. This playoffs hasn't been that. And I had an argument with my mother yesterday about this because, she hates Montreal, which is fine. But, it's saying, Price has stolen a lot of games. I said, yeah, but he hasn't this playoffs. Other than game 5 and this game 6 overtime against Toronto, he didn't. He hasn't. Game 3 against Vegas, those 3 games. Other than that, he's been just a cog in the machine, because the Montreal Canadiens have just been better than the opposition. You can look on paper and say every team they beat is better than them. Sure. Paper's good until it gets shredded, and then who gives a crap anymore? But Carey Price has been good, just like Andrei Vasilevskiy's been very good. However, so far in this series, Andrei Vasilevskiy's been better than Carey Price. That's not a fact. That's just a fact, not opinion, not conjecture. And for Montreal to win this series, to come back, just to make it interesting, they're down 2-0. Carey Price needs to have one of those games where you go, okay, that's the best goaltender in the world. That's the guy who's going to be playing for Team Canada at the Olympics. That's the, lock Hall of Famer. And we haven't seen that yet. He's allowed 8 goals in 2 games. It's not a great stat line. But, Vasilevskiy's only allowed 2. But you need Carey Price it needs to be 2 goals or less tonight. It can't be 3. And to me, Montreal, if they're going to win this game, it's going to be 2-1 or 3-2. So I think 2 goals is the max for Carey Price to allow tonight. But I expect him to have a big game tonight. I expect him to be, Carey legend, where he comes out and he's just lights out and shuts the door on the Tampa Bay Lightning, because it's back home in Montreal. It's their first Stanley Cup final game in Montreal since 1993, where they won the cup. It's going to be electric, even with only 3,500 fans after the 10,500 were rejected, which is idiotic. But tonight's about Carey Price to me. You are the best, quote unquote, even though Vasilevskiy's got a cup. Most people would say Carey Price is the best goaltender in the world. However, if Vasilevskiy, say it's a quick series, he only allows 4 or 5 goals, and he's got 2 cups, and Carey Price is still sitting there, it's tough to argue that Vasilevskiy's not the best goaltender in the world. I think you can make that argument right now. I'm just saying, if Price doesn't have a great series and Vasilevskiy's lights out, I believe the mantle, the crown, will be put on Vasilevskiy's head and removed from Carey. So does Tampa have the better team? Yes. But who was better in game 2? Montreal. And who won the game? Tampa. Because Vasilevskiy was better than Carey Price. So we'll see. They're both fantastic netminders. And Vasilevskiy's been very good in the first 2 games. Maybe he has an off night as well, and Carey just plays great. That's who wouldn't think that's possible? It's very plausible. Carey Price plays great when you need him to. He's played great at the Olympics. At the World Cup of Hockey. He comes up in the big moments. Tonight's the biggest game he's ever played. No doubt in my mind. You're down 2-0 in the Stanley Cup final. If you lose tonight, I think the Montreal Canadiens will be swept on Monday. If they lose tonight, I think it'll be a sweep, because you're going to have it's going to be 3-0 in the series. You're going to have 2 days off just to kind of sit there and stew being down 3-0 And I don't know how much fight they'll have left after sitting there 2 days thinking, our season's over. I got tickets to the Bahamas. Let's just, I'm done with this. Great season. Hopefully we get some guys in the free agency market. Check please. That happens. That happens. There's games where you're down 4-1. We're not coming back tonight. And we've all had that in any sport where you're like, let's just throw the bench guys out there. We're done tonight. That happens. So we'll see. But I see Carey Price this being a big night for him. Also, Brendan Gallagher. The first 2 games, Brendan Gallagher's been the punching bag for the Montreal Canadiens. And I love his spunk. I love that he's not afraid to go back to the front of the net. He takes a beating, but that's his job. And he does it, with a smile on his face. But it can't just be get to the front of the net, have a bunch of bruises, you're bloodied. You need to be impactful. And for him, it's score a goal. Him, Danault, Lehkonen are a great checking line, but contribute something. It can't just be a great checking line for me. That line needs to score. And for Brendan Gallagher, you're too good of a player just to be a third line checker. Blake Coleman has goals in every game so far this series. He's got 2 goals in 2 games. He's a third liner, checking line, quote unquote, but he's got 2 goals. Brendan Gallagher arguably plays on their top. You could say Toffoli's their top line, but Gallagher, they have the best defensive assignment. It can't just be play defense. You're the heartbeat of this team. Other than Carey Price, I think he's the best leader on this team. He's the de facto captain after Shea Weber. He's been there. He's been here a long time. He's got the respect of that locker room. And whether the opposition doesn't like him, that only helps his case. I think he needs to be a guy that puts a puck in the back of the net tonight. And this is another big night for him to say, this is my moment. For Tampa, I expect them to be better tonight because they were awful in game 2. Third period, they came on, but they were outplayed from the jump in game 1 where they were careless. They had bad turnovers. They couldn't get the puck out of their, they just kept making stupid decisions trying to exit the zone. Vasilevsky bailed them out. And they weren't getting high quality scoring opportunities, but they capitalized when they had to. Cirelli scored an ugly goal. Coleman scores with 0.3 of a second left in the second period. And then Andre Palat scores on a Joel Edmondson bad pass. So you capitalize on your opportunities, but we saw them in game 1. They have another gear. So I think this game will be the closest game out of the 3 so far, because game 1, it was all Tampa. Game 2 was really all Montreal, but the goaltending was great, and Tampa just found a way to win. I expect tonight's game to be a 1-goal game. I expect it to be tooth and nail. It's a fight to the bitter end, and it will define the series. Because if Montreal can find a way to win tonight, who knows? You come off a win, you got 2 days off to heal up, rest, and say, we got another home game on Monday. Let's go win that one. If Tampa wins tonight, you got a 3-0 series lead. Blood's in the water. The Stanley Cup's going to be in the building on Monday, and I think it'll be handed out on Monday. So that's kind of how I see how this series going. But a lot still to be decided. Obviously, game 3 tonight in Montreal. Lehkonen, Killorn, still haven't heard anything yet on the status of those 2 players. Potentially maybe a move on defense. I mentioned Romanoff maybe checking in for Gustafsson. So Montreal may have a few tricks up their sleeve tonight, but we'll see on the injury front and ultimately what happens with the lineups for both of these groups. So 9:00 tonight, we got Lightning at Montreal for game 3 of the Stanley Cup final. Last night in the NBA, it was game 5 of the Eastern Conference final, where it was a weird one because neither star for the Atlanta Hawks or Milwaukee Bucks played, where Giannis Antetokounmpo, the 2-time league MVP, a 1-time defensive player of the year, was hurt with a leg injury for the Milwaukee Bucks. Trae Young, the former 5th overall pick for the Atlanta Hawks, was no go for the Hawks, where he has a bone bruise in his foot. So it was Milwaukee's, star-ish players against Atlanta's, crew that's just been punching above their weight class all year, but they're still here in the Eastern Conference Finals. And in Game 4, Trae Young didn't play, but Atlanta found a way to win. Lou Williams, at his first career playoff start, he played really well. Bogdanovich kept firing. John Collins didn't have his great game, didn't have his best game, but they played well, and the bench showed up for Atlanta. And really what Milwaukee did in that game was that they just played stupid basketball. They shot a bunch of threes. They're not a great three-point shooting team. And what they do best is get into the paint. That's where they can crush teams. They could have did that to the Brooklyn Nets in the second round, but it went to 7 games because they just kept shooting bad threes. They're not a good three-point shooting team. So going into last night, I was thinking, well, I think Atlanta's going to win because they've already beaten Milwaukee with Giannis for half the game. And Milwaukee's going to be stupid, keep jacking up threes. Atlanta will be able to capitalize because they're not the greatest three-point shooting team, but they do play smarter basketball. They have good bench players in Danilo Gallinari and Cam Reddish, so they should win this game. But it was a shock last night from Jump Street just how different the game went. For the Milwaukee Bucks, they finally figured out what they do well, and that's put the ball in the paint and shoot the mid-range. But what it was last night early was attack the paint. Brook Lopez had 33 points. He didn't have a combined 33 points in the first 4 games of this series. But last night he goes 33 points, shooting 14 for 18 on his field goal attempts, had 4 blocks, 7 rebounds. And where did he score all those points? In the paint. Clint Capella is the only guy that they have at the rim. John Collins plays the power forward position, but he's not a power forward. He's undersized. And they took advantage of it the whole night. It was Lopez. At times it was Bobby Portis who got the start for Giannis Antetokounmpo, who he had 22 points last night, 8 rebounds, and he couldn't be guarded. At times they had John Collins. At times they had to put Gallinari. He got into foul trouble. And Milwaukee was Atlanta was just a small team, and they couldn't do anything about the big men in the paint. And then their other stars, Chris Middleton, who's so hot and cold, you don't know what you're going to get game in, game out. He had a great game. 26 points, 13 rebounds, 8 assists. He was just their overall a playmaker and what they need him to be. He didn't have to be a superstar last night because they had guys step up. I mentioned Portis and Lopez. And then Drew Holiday, who struggled mightily in the Brooklyn series, but he's played better in this Eastern Conference Final. And I think he had his best game of the postseason last night where he had 25 points, but he added 13 assists. He was just distributing the basketball. He was traded from the New Orleans Pelicans because Milwaukee said, we can win a championship with Giannis now. And this is his first season there. He got signed to a max contract. And they're now a win away after winning 123-112. They're a win away from the NBA Finals, where Giannis, his status is still up in the air when it comes to his leg, but they may play the Phoenix Suns, where you think, well, normally we'd have the Lakers, or normally we have a juggernaut over there, Golden State. You have the Phoenix Suns, who the only player on their roster who's played a finals game is Jay Crowder, who played it last year for the Miami Heat, also played a few years with LeBron James. But I credit Milwaukee Mike Budenholzer. He takes a beating for his coaching tactics. And last night he finally hit it right, where I was watching the first half and I just said, they're not shooting the three. Finally, at times they let Atlanta back in the game by shooting the three too much. But to start second half, they didn't go back to the three. They went in the paint. Lopez was just dominant, scored 14 points in the third quarter, where he was getting lobs. They throw the ball to him in the low post, and Capella couldn't do anything, or John Collins couldn't do anything. Then they bring in Gallinari and Reddish for some size, but he's 7 feet against a 6'9". You're going to win that matchup every day of the week. And Bobby Portis is a guy who can just stretch the floor. He can shoot the three, but last night they didn't care. It was almost like Mike Budenholzer said, we're going to win this game because we can dominate them in the paint, and let's let them shoot threes. And another thing Milwaukee did was just they played better basketball. Atlanta turned the ball over 6 more times. Milwaukee had 6 more steals. They out-rebounded the Atlanta Hawks. The offensive rebounds early in the game were just incredible because You had Capella going for rebounds, but you had Bobby Portis, or you had Lopez, or even Chris Middleton would create extra possessions for the Hawks, for the Bucks, and they would just kill the Hawks getting second chance opportunities. So looking ahead to Game 6 tomorrow, Giannis, I don't think will play. He injured his leg. I think they look at this and say, Game 6 in Atlanta, we saw the game plan, what we did in Game 5. Let's try to duplicate that tomorrow night. And then if we win, we book our ticket to the NBA Finals. So in the perfect world, they win. We go to the NBA Finals. Maybe the NBA Finals will start Monday or Tuesday. Maybe Giannis can come back then, but we give him a couple extra days. So I wouldn't play him in Game 6, regardless. If they were down 3-2 and he could play, obviously you're going to play him, but I would not play him Saturday night. For Atlanta, I expect Trae Young to play. They said that he was going to sit out last night in hopes that he could return for Game 6. So I think Trae Young will play with the Hawks season on the line. I can't see their best player. He's obviously not going to be 100%, but I think he'll at least try it out there. We saw James Harden do that in the second round for the Brooklyn Nets. So I think Trae Young hopefully is a decent pain threshold, and he can go out there and play. So I expect him to play. But for Atlanta, you're getting smaller with Trae Young on the floor. But obviously he's a great shooter. He can distribute the ball. You don't got to hope Bogdanovich. Bogdanovich had 28 points last night, but he needs some help. John Collins needs to play better. He has not had a great series. Clint Capella cannot get in foul trouble that early in the game. Also, just defend better. But their lineup's not going to get any bigger when it comes to defending the paint overnight. But it may just have to be a collective effort where they say, okay, we need to box out better. Guys, we all need to converge on rebounds, because Bobby Portis, Brook Lopez, Middleton, even a Pat Connaughton, these guys are getting boards. We cannot allow them to get this many second chance points because they are killing us in the paint. And maybe you have to play box and one defense. We saw Phoenix do that in Game 6 against the Clippers. Just change up your mentality a little bit if you're Nate McMillan. He's been a great coach all year. So let's see what he has in his sleeve as the Hawks are facing elimination here in the Eastern Conference Final. But with both stars out, we saw some people step up, not your usual characters for sure, with Brook Lopez, who's had a lackadaisical postseason to say the least, but he gets out from shooting threes as a 7-footer, gets back in the paint where he's really was great at the beginning of his career, and he made the Atlanta Hawks pay last night. So Milwaukee wins the game 123-112, and they have the opportunity to book their ticket to the NBA Finals Saturday night. It'll be a 9:30 tip live from Atlanta. Yesterday I talked about what you could watch for Canada Day, and one of the tournaments was the Rocket Mortgage. That's the golf tournament this weekend in Detroit, and it was a rainy day in Detroit. They had over a 3-hour rain delay where play was stopped, and they played until late last evening. So a few golfers are finishing up their first round today, including a pair of Canadians, which we'll get to in a minute. But the real headline from this tournament was Bryson DeChambeau. Prior to him teeing off, it was announced that he had parted ways with his longtime caddy, Tim Tucker. And Tim's been with DeChambeau for a number of years. They departed briefly a few years ago. They decided to bring it back. But it sounds as if this may be permanent. And one thing about Bryson is he's very hard to deal with. We see him on the course. He's constantly shaking his head. He asks his caddy for a lot of information. And I don't think he's the easiest guy to get along with. He puts a lot of pressure on himself. If he doesn't get a good read, he looks at his caddy a lot. And for Tim, I think this was just a frustration thing where he said, Bryson's not getting the result he wants, and maybe he's directing it at him, and he was sick of it. So I can't blame Tim for departing, but this was just, a few hours before he teed off at the Rocket Mortgage. And, a member of the Cobra, if you look at his gear, he wears a Cobra hat every time he golfs, would be caddying for him. And I think it was just a distracting day for him. He had he only shot even par for the day. Obviously, he won this tournament last year, so he knows the course well, but he only shoots even par. And That's right on the cut line. He declined to be interviewed after his round. So clearly he didn't want to have any part of this conversation. And not only that, but it was funny because right after it was announced, Brooks Koepka, obviously his rival, goes on Twitter and says caddy appreciation post. And he writes about his caddy, how it was his best friend and he couldn't do it without him. And he just said, like, love you, bro. This was clearly a shot at Bryson because his caddy just had to get away from him. Brooks has a good relationship with his, and it continues the rivalry. Obviously, we have the match upcoming on Tuesday. We'll have Phil Mickelson and Tom Brady against Bryson and Aaron Rodgers in another of these little invitationals where they battle each other. That'll be on TNT on Tuesday. So I love Koepka coming back at him with that. I think that's really funny. Obviously, they're both great golfers. Bryson's currently number 6 in the world rankings, but this is a big deal. You part with your caddy. Sometimes it can be a good thing, but we see departing with a coach is not always a great thing in sports. And he's been with Tim for a while, but Bryson is just really controlling. He needs every bit of information. He needs to know every scientific angle about it. We've seen him go to that yardage book so many times during a round. And I'm sure that gets draining on Tim because if he says it's 175 yards to the hole and Bryson hits it and it rolls somewhere else, I'm sure Tim is hearing about it at the end of the round. And it's a divorce for sure. We'll see if they end up coming back together again for they departed and they found a way to come back together the last time. So maybe that will happen again, but just big golf news because Bryson's always got headlines about him. And for him to do that just hours from his tee time yesterday was a big surprise. But the tournament itself was a big surprise because the leader, Jordan Thompson, a 22-year-old, a guy my age, shoots a course record 63 yesterday, 9 under to lead the tournament. And Jordan's got this interesting story because he wrote a letter to the Rocket Mortgage asking to get a sponsor exemption into this tournament. He doesn't have his tour card yet. He's only got room for a few tour events. He missed the cut at the Travelers, asked the Rocket Mortgage people if he could be a part of this tournament, and he was granted permission. And what's he doing the first day? He shoots 9 under 63, just tearing up the course. Now, it'd be a hell of a story if Jordan go on to win this tournament. He would get his tour card. But one thing you can say is that you can't win a tournament on Thursday, but you can certainly lose it. But he puts himself in great position. Shoots 9 under. The leaderboard there's some guys at the top of it. You got Joaquin Niemann, who's a strong player. Tom Lewis at 7 under. But what a story for him. Guys Gary Woodland, a former U.S. Open champion, DeChambeau, Mackenzie Hughes, guys have been in the news lately, didn't have great shooting days. It's kind of guys in the middle of the pack who've had a great start to the tournament. A lot of the main guys are also starting to go over to Europe. We see Rory McIlroy is competing in the European Tour this week, just a few weeks away from the British Open. So we'll start to see some guys go over to Europe. Likely have the John Deere tournament next week and won't have the best field in it, but good for Jordan Thompson. You write a letter, you get the exemption, but you don't want to go there, get the exemption, then miss the cut. He at least puts himself in a position. He's the leader coming into today, have another strong round. Who knows? You go into the weekend and you may be able to catch fire and make some history here. But we saw a 22-year-old Garrick Higo win a tournament just a few weeks ago. So younger guys who've never won an event on the PGA Tour are getting wins. And Kramer Hickok nearly got a win last week at the Travelers where he went 8 playoff rounds with Harris English. So, will it be Jordan Thompson's week? Could it be a pair of Canadians? Guys who are not so well known, Roger Sloan, Michael Gicklick are both at 5 under to start today. So they're within 4 strokes of the lead. Could they catch fire here at the Rocket Mortgage? So still a lot of golf to be played, but a good start to the tournament. And we'll see what happens today. Bryson DeChambeau is second day since departing with his caddy. Maybe he'll have more success. today after shooting even par to start his title defense yesterday. Last night, the Major League Baseball announced their All-Stars for this season. The All-Star game is a week from Monday. And I hate All-Star games. I hate them almost as much as I hate shootouts. But nevertheless, the All-Star, it's important. It's nice for players to say, well, I'm an All-Star. I was an All-Star this year. I get rewarded for my great play. So last night, I was just looking through names. And two teams really jumped out to me for having a lot of All-Stars. One, the Toronto Blue Jays. They have Teoscar Hernandez, right fielder. He's making his first All-Star appearance. They have Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who'll be making his first career All-Star appearance. Marcus Semien is making his first All-Star appearance as second baseman, beating out Jose Altuve. Then you have the Boston Red Sox. Rafael Devers, his first All-Star appearance, third base. Xander Bogaerts going to his third. He's been a great shortstop for a long time. But you have three Blue Jays hitters on this list, only two Red Sox. So it would scream to you, well, the Toronto Blue Jays should be right in the thick of it with the Boston Red Sox, right? I mean, they got three All-Stars starters on this team. However, the Red Sox sit 8.5 games ahead of the Blue Jays in the standings, and they are 20 games above 500, while the Blue Jays are a mere 3 games over 500. So this tells me a few things. Blue Jays batters are legit, because Bo Bichette was second in voting when it comes to shortstop. Shortstop behind Xander Bogaerts. He was second in voting. So he was right there. They could have had 4. But their bats are great. Teoscar's having a great season. Vlad is having a fantastic. Marcus Semien getting a 1-year deal, a prove-it contract, has been everything the Blue Jays have wanted and more. But what it tells me is that their pitching, what we all know, their pitching stinks. We saw yesterday, Hyun-Jin Ryu is their ace, but he struggled mightily again yesterday, giving up 5 earned runs. He walked in April, May, he walked 8 batters in 2 months. In the month of June, he walked 11. Just in 1 month, yesterday, he walked another 2 batters, giving up 5 earned. And it's always tougher because the first inning, he struggles. He gave up 2 earned to start the day. Wasn't great. Blue Jay Semien got 1 back when he hit a leadoff home run. But the Blue Jays ended up losing 7-2. They lose 2 or 3 to the Seattle Mariners, where it's their starting pitching. It can be their bullpen because Tyler Chatwood struggled again yesterday. He's hot and cold right now, where you might get he throws an inning, it's 9 pitches, or he's going to throw an inning where he walks 2 and gives up 3 earned, and he throws 35, and it's just a mess. You don't know what you're getting. They're hoping Adam Simber can be a guy that they can add to the bullpen. He didn't have a great day yesterday. Obviously they got Romano. You want guys to come back healthy, and there's still the trade deadline and all this, but the Red Sox are 20 games above 500. They won yesterday 15-1 over the Kansas City Royals. And, the Blue Jays have been beating up on bad teams lately. They've been beating the Baltimores, beating Miami. Seattle's not a great team. You can't lose 2 or 3 to Seattle. And I mentioned yesterday, this weekend's huge for them. They got the Tampa Bay Rays, who have really hit a slope here. They're going downwards. Blue Jays stock seems to be going up, but that stock needs to continue to rise against teams that are good. It can't be just against Baltimore. You're going to beat Baltimore every time. They are one of the worst teams in baseball. They're like the Arizona Diamondbacks. They are terrible. But it's interesting to see these players. You got Shohei Ohtani, who's on the list, who's a stud. I think he's the front runner for MVP right now in the American League, him or Vladdy. But they're not going to make the playoffs. Toronto Blue Jays are likely not going to make the playoffs. And this team is filled with the Boston Red Sox right now are heavy favorites to win the American League East, so they should make the playoffs. You see all these teams. Aaron Judge is an all-star. I don't think the Yankees are going to make the playoffs. So great players, but these teams are not, Altuve didn't get voted in as a starter. He's on, he's obviously on the Houston Astros. Matt Chapman didn't make it in at third base for the Oakland Athletics. They're going to make the playoffs. It's just interesting to see how all-star teams are full of talented players, of course. But do they really mean anything? Well, looking at this knowledge, they really don't. Like Mike Trout got voted in as an all-star. He's been out for half the year and he got voted in because he's Mike Trout. But again, he's on an Angels team that's not going to make the playoffs. The Atlanta Braves are clawing in the National League. Freddie Freeman got voted in. Ronald Acuna Jr. Of course, these are fantastic players. But all-star games are full of great players that doesn't necessarily mean that they're successful. Because a player can have a great season. We've seen Connor McDavid have a season where he had over 100 points. Edmonton missed the playoffs. That's a lost season. Making an all-star team, getting nominated for a Hart Trophy, what does that do for you? And this all-star appearance for a team, I think especially like a guy like Aaron Judge or Mike Trout, it's empty calories because you're not going anywhere. At least if you're the Blue Jays, you can say, I'm sure if you're upper management, you can say, well, the kids are young. We're going to get pitching eventually. Well, we've been hearing that for a few years. I'm sure a lot of Blue Jays fans are a little angry, but they'll wait. They'll give management a little bit of time. But eventually you got to say, okay, we have all these all-stars. Why the hell aren't we making the playoffs? Like that's an easy question. Like, we have all this talent out here tonight. Why the hell are we only 3 games above 500? And, Red Sox have 2. That's good. But why are they 20? And who's Martin Perez? Who's Eduardo Rodriguez? Why are they winning all these games while we struggle to get wins? And I think that those conversations will start to happen. Because it's only human nature to say, well, why is this team better than us? We're better. Look at all of us. We're a couple votes away from having 4 all-star starters in the American League. Basically, our whole team is on the all-star team. Why the hell are we struggling? Why are we 3rd in the American League East standings? Why are we even not in a wild card position? And if you're a Blue Jays fan, I think what you got to hope for today is that management looks at this picture and says, holy crap, we almost had 4 all-stars. Why are we not better? We need to get better because we have all these guys playing at such a high level right now. We need to reward them for that. All these all-stars are doing everything they can to help us win, but our pitching stinks. We need more starters. We need bullpen depth, and they deserve that opportunity. The Padres did that. They saw they had Fernando Tatis Jr. III. They acquired Yu Darvish. They acquired Mike Clevenger. They got Ryan Weathers. They got pitching because they saw what they had in front of them. They signed Manny Machado. They had these bats that were great in Machado and Tatis Jr. and Cronenworth and Tommy Pham. And they said, okay, great. But we know what we're going to do? We're going to go get these pitchers that can push us over the top. And maybe they won't win a World Series this year, but at least they did it. The Blue Jays and Padres were in basically the same position. Tatis Jr. III, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. are the same age. Why didn't the Blue Jays push the chips to the middle yet? The Padres are in arguably just as tough a division. I think the 2 toughest divisions in baseball are the American League East and the National League West. They're both in 3rd, but you could say they're very in drastic differently positions because the Padres are in a playoff spot and they're battling with the Dodgers for 2nd. The Giants are the outlier, like the Boston Red Sox, you could say, in the American League East. But why didn't the Blue Jays make that step? They did it with Tatis Jr. III. Sometimes it's patience, but sometimes there's moments in life, sometimes there's moments in sports where it hits you over the side of the head like a freight train. And you say, wow, we have all this talent. We know they're good, but the world is starting to recognize they're that good too. We need to help these guys out and do more for them. And we'll see what happens. But congrats to all the All-Stars. But I just think the bigger story, the bigger narrative here is, why aren't we better? And for a lot of these teams, like the Angels, like the Blue Jays, who had Yankees, who had All-Stars voted in last night, I think you got to look in the mirror this morning if you're Ross Atkins, if you're Brian Cashman, the GM of the New York Yankees, and say, what are we doing wrong here? That's just something to think about as we head into the weekend. Today at Wimbledon, we're going to see a fun matchup where Andy Murray is going to be on center court this afternoon against Canadian Denis Shapovalov. Denis did not have to play a second round match. Murray advanced in 5 sets, but this is Shapovalov's first match ever on center court. Murray's obviously played multiple times, winning a Wimbledon title before. But Shapovalov, you get to that big stage, you're playing Andy Murray. The crowd's going to be pro Murray. He's obviously making a third round, just a big deal for him after the laundry list of injuries that he's gone through in his career. But we'll see if Shapo can handle it, how he plays today. It's a lot of pressure against a former Grand Slam champion. He's come up short in big moments before. But you have Denis, you have Felix Auger-Aliassime, both in the third round. Felix will play tomorrow against always entertaining Nick Kyrgios, the Aussie. That match may be on center. They haven't announced it yet. I could see that match being on center court. Kyrgios has had some great moments at Wimbledon, including beating Rafael Nadal on center court. So at 19 years old. So we'll see. But these two young men have an opportunity. They're both in the same, they're in different halves of the draw, but Denis didn't play at the French. He should be fresh. Felix was out in the first round. So they both like playing on grass. They both seem comfortable with it. And we'll see what can happen today. The women's draw is wide open like it is all the time, but the one constant in these Grand Slams the past number of months has been Iga Swiatek. She's already advanced this morning to the round of 16. She's won the French Open last year. So she's off to the 4th round as she continues to play great. Karolina Pliskova was in a battle when I finished. She was playing a fellow Czech woman, so she's doing battle with her. She ends up winning her match 6-3, 6-3. So she's advancing to the 4th round. Just looking here, we have Andrei Rublev is in a fight. He's a set apiece of Fabio Fognini. He's a world number 5. So we'll see what he can do. He's currently up a break in the 3rd set. And also today we'll see Novak Djokovic play Canadian Denis Kudla. Big Dan Evans play Sebastian Korda. So some fun tennis over the weekend. Roger Federer will be on court tomorrow against Cameron Norrie, the Brit. Cilic, Medvedev. I mentioned the Canadians matchups. So a lot of tennis over the weekend. We got game 3 of the Stanley Cup final, game 6 Eastern Conference final, and some baseball as we head into the weekend. So everybody. Oh, and I wanted to say before we wrap today, Monday night at 5:00, I'll be doing an interview with Zach Fucale. And for people that don't know, Zach Fucale is a former Halifax Moosehead, won a Memorial Cup in 2013 with Nathan McKinnon and Jonathan Drouin, and that great team that they had in Halifax. And I'll talk to him about his career. He's playing with the Hershey Bears now, the American Hockey League. We'll talk about his career, this COVID year. He spent a lot of time representing his country at the Spangler Cup. I'm going to get into that. If that's not a tournament you're familiar with, we'll dive into that on Monday. But I'm going to be interviewing him. That'll be on Facebook Live again, just like I did with Doug McLean. So 5:00 on Monday, please tune in. You can, if you have a question and it's good, I will ask it to Zach. But comment, join in, be part of the live event. I love interviewing people. I appreciate Zach coming on, going to be coming on the show. It's great for him. It's great for him to do that, take the time out of his off season. But that'll be Monday at 5. I'll be interviewing Zach Fucale. So he's a really nice guy, and obviously he was teammates with my cousin Sawyer. So we have that connection a little bit as well. So Monday, interview with Zach Fucale. Everybody have a great weekend. Enjoy the sports. Game 3 tonight. Enjoy that. But as always, take care, stay healthy, and we'll talk soon.